Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into global CO2 emissions, looking at the latest data we could find. We want to cut through the noise, give you the key stuff. And the headline number is pretty stark. 37.4 billion metric tons. That's the global energy-related euro figure for 2023. Just massive. So our mission today is to unpack that. Where is it coming from? What are the recent trends? And maybe, just maybe, find some glimmers of hope in the data.
Yeah, the 37.4 billion tons figure, it's solid data from the International Energy Agency, the IEA. It's really the benchmark for 2023, covering all those energy-related co2 emissions across the globe. Gives you that big picture.
Okay, so when you look at that huge number, 37.4 billion,
right?
How does it break down? Like, where is most of this stuff actually coming from? What's the biggest piece of this, well, very large pie?
Right, crucial question. If you break it down by sector, electricity and heat production, that's the biggest chunk. It accounts for something like 42% of the total, which, often reflects how much we still rely on fossil fuels for power, especially in developing areas.
42%. Wow, okay. What's next?
Next up is transport. That's around 24%. Think, cars, trucks, planes, mostly road travel, driving that. Yeah. And you've got industry-heavy stuff like cement, steel making, that's got 21%.
Okay.
And then buildings, so heating homes, cooling offices, that sort of thing, that's smaller, around 6%. The rest, about 7%, is kind of lumped into other categories.
Got it. That breakdown definitely helps put the scale into perspective. So given those sources, what's the trend looking like? How are these numbers changing year over year? Are things heading in the right direction at all, or is it still climbing?
Well, unfortunately, the overall trend is still up. Emissions actually rose in 2023 compared to 2022. It was about 410 million tons more, which works out to a 1.1% increase.
Okay, so still going up. Why? What drove that increase?
A couple of things, really. Coal use actually went up in some places, mainly for generating power. Sometimes that's tied to specific economic things or energy security worries. Natural gas emissions were, interestingly, pretty stable, maybe even slightly down. And renewables, they grew a lot, which is good news, but just, well, not quite fast enough to cancel out all the fossil fuel use, you see.
Right. That 1.1% rise is definitely sobering. But I thought the sources mentioned something else, kind of a counterpoint, something slowing the growth down. Is there any good news hidden in there, a bit of a silver lining?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting, actually. What the IEA data shows very clearly is how much worse it could have been. Without the clean energy technologies we already have deployed, think solar PV, wind power, that emissions increase would have been 3 times higher.
3 times? Wow.
Yeah, 3 times. So while the total number is still concerning, obviously, the impact of renewables is huge. Solar and wind, mainly because they're getting cheaper and better, they aren't just chipping away at the edges, they're fundamentally changing the path we're on. They really are making a massive difference already, slowing things down considerably. It kind of underlines just how critical they are.
Okay, so let's bring this together for you listening. We've seen the huge headline number, 37.4 billion tons. We know where it's mostly coming from: electricity, transport, industry. And we know emissions are still rising slightly. But crucially, there's this massive impact from clean energy already happening, preventing a much steeper rise. Hopefully that gives you a quick but clear picture of the current situation.
And maybe it leaves us all with a thought, right? If renewables are already stopping emissions from being 3 times worse, well, what does that tell us about where we need to focus our efforts? What does it imply about the scale and the priorities needed as we keep tackling, the climate challenge? It's definitely something to think about, the power of the solutions we already have.